Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Kevin. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so definitely glad to have y'all. Can you give me a little bit of background? Like, how did y'all get into recruiting? And if you don't mind explaining, what exactly do recruiters do?
Yeah, Will,
Yeah,
I'll let you take this one.
absolutely. I've actually been in the game, the recruitment game, a little bit less than Dave. I think if I remember rightly, he's about 6 to 12 months more experienced than myself.
I think
I
so.
came directly out of university, and effectively for me, it was quite a good platform where you could be quite entrepreneurial, where you can sort of create your own success and really meet some skilled individuals. So I think as soon as I found out a little bit more about what it really entails, and particularly here, doing technology recruitment, had that real platform to learn about something which I didn't actually have the understanding about. I think every day is a bit of a learning day here from conversations with yourself, hiring managers, people like Dave as well, where you're finding out a little bit more about a technology, about a project, about the market. I don't know. There's just so much that you can learn. It's a really good platform for that, and I think every day, like I say, since then has been a learning day, and it feels like you're kind of bettering yourself, whether it be you know 10 years here, whether it be 5 years here. You feel like you're more of a well-rounded person, both sort of technically as well as kind of marketable as well. So yeah, that's kind of me. In terms of Dave, I'm sure he's got an introduction for himself as well.
Yeah, so same as Will, I came straight from university as well. Slightly more related background, I think. I actually did my degree in computer science. So I have that little bit of background knowledge about kind of software engineering and technology across the board. It's probably not as in depth as I'd like it to be. And to be honest, I learned so much more about software engineering and technology in this job in the past almost 2 years than I did in a 3 year degree. Because you're actually speaking to people who've got real world experience. You're speaking to upwards of 50 to 100 people every single day. You really do learn a lot more than sitting in a classroom, just being taught. And it's a really interesting one, right? You do get to see that technological side, but you also do get that day to day interaction with so many different types of people, and that's what I love about it. Just the interaction and the connection.
I'm just curious, what made you want to get in on the recruiting side, given that you do have the computer science degree?
Yeah, so I get that asked that a lot, even in my interview for here at 94. Um, I just wasn't very good at it, to be honest, in terms of coding. I could do it. I learned Java, Python, JavaScript, etc. But I just wasn't that great at it, and I didn't want to sit in a room by myself. I think I just loved speaking to people and being on the phone. And especially because when I did finish university, it was still during COVID and the pandemic. So it would have been kind of a fully remote office job. And I did want to be in the office surrounded by people. It's definitely a route I could go back to, but for now, I'm sticking to this.
Absolutely. Just to confirm, William, are you currently in the UK and David, you're in the US?
So we're
I'm
both
actually sorry,
go
go
on.
on.
I was going to say, yeah, we're both based in the UK currently. As I think I mentioned to you before,
Yeah.
obviously, yeah, Dave is working exclusively with US clients and candidates and developers and the US market, which is hopefully where there's a bit of insight. I'll let him continue there because I'm really interested in. But yeah,
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I spend my time mostly in the London office, but do spend a lot of time traveling to New York and Chicago. I do think that it's really beneficial to meet people in person, and also the time difference over here is a little bit of an issue, but it's not too bad.
Absolutely. From what you guys have been seeing, what is the contrast between the UK and the United States tech market?
In terms of a comparison, I think that the US has been hit a lot harder than the UK. It seems like the UK now is starting to ease off a little bit, but the US still seems pretty stuck in its ways as it has been for the past kind of 4, 5, 6 months, kind of since the beginning of this year, really. In terms of the UK, Will, you're probably more suited to answer that.
yeah, I think in terms of the UK, I guess like kind of David alluded to, there's a lot of companies who sort of shut off, I would say, the beginning of this year. There was a little bit of the back end of 2022 hiring going on, which almost masked over a lot of company freezes and whatnot. But I think generally speaking, it has started to pick up. I think one of the things we do, and we'll get into this in a bit more detail later on, is we like to advise people when a good time to hire is and a good time to search the market is as well. And this is certainly more of one of those times where you'd recommend it a little bit more. I think coming into this year, there was a lot more companies who would take months to kind of make a decision on hiring due to budgets, due to whatever it is, due to competitors not hiring. But I think at the moment, don't get me wrong, it's not this time last year. This time last year, there were a lot of positions and there were a lot of candidates, developers who were looking in the market and moving for quite lucrative moves. I think now there's a lot of sort of difference between this year and last year, and most of it is down to obviously the hiring freezes. But as Dave says, I think it is picking up, and fortunately, hopefully going into the back end of the year, we'll see a lot more kind of lucrative moves, a lot more ambitious moves, which is what everyone does want in the market. So looking up, but it certainly had its tough times.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. You mentioned kind of the end of 2022. It seemed like things were all going well, still a lot of firms hiring, but I think we did start feeling the effects. It was just the fact that companies wanted to spend their yearly budget in kind of Q4 last year. So they did bolster up the hiring, but as soon as January hit, it was kind of like a tap just turned off completely. But now, yeah, it is definitely easing up, I do think. And there's still a lot of candidates on the market, but as I said, not too many jobs, as I'm sure you're aware, Kevin, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. From what I've seen, it's not a lot of opportunities out there. So, like, what do you guys recommend developers do to really stand out?
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of standing out, I think obviously the first kind of interaction that you have is your CV. That's the first thing they're going to see. Obviously, there's so much that we can say, but the thing which is probably consistent market wide is the CV. And in terms of that, I think there's some really important things to kind of add to that. I think one of the best things which I could recommend would certainly be tailoring CVs very slightly to jobs like specific requirements. Say you need Angular 7 or I don't know, C# in one position, in one vacancy. I would say really highlighting your skills in that, for example, would be one of the things I would recommend. I think ambitious career moves as well is something else which a lot of hiring managers like to see. Someone who's moved from a junior into a mid-level quite quickly, into a senior within a couple of years beyond that as well, and it's starting to look into kind of lead and maybe even architectural roles, that sort of thing. I think I see a lot of value in developers who have gone down that kind of path. I'm sure, again, Dave's got some to add to that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, as you said, CV resume is definitely the first port of call. You'll see, I'll speak to so many people for, say, a C++ role within a bank. On LinkedIn, their profile looks amazing, but you get their resume and their first 5 skills are nothing to do with C++. It doesn't make any sense. So I would really recommend, firstly, as Will said, tailoring your resume. I think that makes a lot of sense. Secondly, the way that recruiters do reach out to you at the end of the day is through LinkedIn. So ensuring that is up to date is super beneficial. So any keywords, adding skills, getting your friends to endorse you I do think that it is valuable. Because a recruiter sees everything on your profile, so that's definitely crucial to your job search.
Yeah, I think just to kind of continue on from that, the word that Dave said there, relevance, is probably the most important part of it. I think, it's great to have 10 pages on the last 10 projects that you've done, but 2 pages of really concise and really specific skill set, experience, that sort of thing is always going to benefit you. It's much better to have 2 pages of quality than 10 pages where you're hoping that one of the words is going to be picked up, sort of thing.
Absolutely. So, like, what are some of the biggest mistakes people make on their resumes, and for y'all, what constitutes like a good standout resume?
I think it's really important, as Will said, to not make it too long. If I get a resume that's 10 pages long at size like 8 font of just lines and lines of just continuous work of pretty much every single thing you've done, that just doesn't help at all, because no one's going to read thousands of words on tiny projects you've done. just to really highlight your key skills that are tailored to the role that you're applying for is super beneficial. I'd say kind of no more than 2 or 3 pages max, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it goes back to sort of tailoring the skills, tailoring the projects that you've done. If you know that the company's looking for someone to come in and build up a Ruby on Rails team, for example, if you've done that before, that should be the like the headline, for example. That should be what you're pointing out to them. That's why you're the perfect person, not that you did that as part of a job role that you did, I don't know, 6 years ago. That should be the real headline. And I think there's a lot of value in that, because it almost works twofold. If you're really keen for a position, let the hiring team know. Let them know that this is the position that you're applying for. Not that you've thrown your CV out to 10 recruiters, 15 job boards, 20 different companies, that sort of thing. Let them know that it's this position that you want more than anything. Because I think willingness to make a difference at a company is probably one of the most important characteristics as well. That you can be fantastic at what you do, but if you're not there to really add value, what makes you better than developer A, developer C kind of thing? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So like once you see somebody that stands out and you reach out to them on LinkedIn, is there anything that someone has done before that kind of made you back off, like whether it's how they responded back over phone or the LinkedIn message?
Yeah, I think I'd say there's no reply is a bad reply, right? It's always great to connect to people. Some things that maybe are a little bit of a red flag to recruiters would be kind of instantly sending your resume across them and going, yeah, I'm happy to interview for any role. That shows that they are just interviewing at a million places trying to get a job, which obviously in some cases it is necessary for some individuals. But I do think it's important to really tailor your CV, actually listen to the recruiter if you are going for a recruiter, as to what they say to put on your resume, because at the end of the day, they're the ones speaking to the hiring managers, the directors, the HR teams behind the scenes, and they're the people that are going to understand exactly what the client's looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think Dave's kind of hit the nail on the head there. Another thing I would say is kind of pointing out things like salary straight away. Like, don't get me wrong, none of us work for free. I don't work for free. Dave doesn't work for free, for example. We've all got reasons why we work, but realistically, again, to kind of stand out, you want to be the person who is really going to add that value. This person who is going to be that perfect fit. And I think, again, part of what a recruiter or a headhunter or a software coach, as I know that you've had on before, is there to do, is there to make, it's supposed to be about a perfect fit. It's not supposed to be about a good fit. I would like to work with you, Kevin, to make sure that you're working at the perfect position for you, so that you're going to be there for 10 years. I know that obviously contract works slightly different, and that's a little bit more transactional. It's a little bit more here and now, the right person for the right job for maybe 6 months' time. But particularly within the permanent recruitment, I would say it's very much a case of ensuring that it's the right position for you, investing in your future, whether it be $5,000, £5,000 less than you were really hoping for, but it's something that you're going to enjoy. That, I think, is a lot more value than potentially fishing every last dollar, every last pound out of a company's budget. So yeah, I think besides that, generally speaking, like Dave said, someone who's quite open to have a conversation. I think the conversations are really valuable either way, whether you're interested in the position, whether you're not. Well, like we kind of said, we speak to 50, 100 people a day, and every conversation you learn something, whether it's about what company A is doing, what the market's doing. There's real value in using that. And a lot of the time we would recommend people have that conversation. If nothing else, is a benchmarking opportunity. If Dave, for example, like you mentioned earlier, has got a C++ opportunity at a bank, look, you might be really, really good at C++ working in a trading firm, but you've sort of ruled out banks. Have the conversation, find out exactly what it is they're doing. You might be perfect for this position. It might actually be the perfect opportunity for you, but maybe it's not the right time. There's certain things that you can gain from a conversation. It's not just a case of, us putting your resume, your CV forward to a relevant hiring team.
Agreed.
So I know, like, even for seniors right now, it's really hard to get hired. But so for juniors, it must be extremely difficult. So from what y'all have seen, like, what are some of the things juniors have done to stand out to actually get hired in this, in this economic?
So Sorry, go on. I've got a really good example of this with someone I'm working with at the moment who's they've got a fantastic sort of portfolio behind their experience. Their experience is about 6 months, but they themselves have been using it's a Ruby on Rails position, and they've been using Ruby on Rails in like different ways. They've got a YouTube account, they've got a GitHub account. I think HackerRank there, something like in the top 7% of developers, and that sort of thing. Look, it's not commercial experience, and everyone's going to want for an entry level role, junior role. They still look for 18 months of experience kind of thing for some hiring managers. But someone who's used it for 12 years, look, they're clearly improving. They've clearly used it on the older technology and probably still working on it on the more up to date technology as well. I think again, it's sort of going the above and beyond. It's the why are they doing this? They're passionate about code. They're making a YouTube channel. It was actually interesting because they were teaching people, despite not having any commercial experience, how to do things within Ruby on Rails. And it's one of these things, like, I saw a lot of value because I knew that they were really passionate about the job. They were going to perform really well in an interview. And I think, adding that value kind of goes back to the last point in terms of not just sending your CV over to anything, but it sort of works both ways. You want to work with the best candidates, and you want to work with those who, are going to be high performing. And I think hiring teams would see that as well. If you see someone who's got 300 repositories on GitHub, for example, it shows a lot of commitment. And I know that obviously you do a lot of work with coder conversations and personal projects as well. That certainly holds a lot of value. So that would be kind of my thing for juniors. I think do as much as you can. It's sort of like having the conversations here. Every day is a learning day. You might make a mistake on Thursday, learn how to fix it on Friday, and then instantly you're a better developer. So yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I think that so we in our US team, we mostly focused in financial services, right? So large scale kind of investment banks, high frequency trading firms, hedge funds, and smaller fintech firms too. Especially the larger firms, they all do grad hiring. So if that's something that is available at your college, your university, wherever you may be, it's definitely something to have a look at. I think that is really important, and they do pay quite well, especially within the financial services. Just to link on from kind of pay, I think at the moment, about a year ago, 2 years ago, post-COVID, salaries were hugely inflated. My light's gone off in my room. Where the salaries were hugely inflated because there's a lot of candidates, but also a lot of roles on the market. So candidates had the bargaining power. Right now, there's a lot of candidates and not many roles. So the client does have all the power right now. And you're seeing a lot of juniors asking for probably a little bit more than they should be, being a little bit cheeky, which is absolutely fair enough if you are living, in New York or over on the West Coast somewhere. It does cost more to live. But we are seeing salaries slowly level out and not rising at the rate that they were 6 to 12 months ago. So I definitely think it's important to know your worth and not price yourself outside of the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think from there as well, like you say, probably about a year ago, these developers probably had an offer elsewhere. 2 companies which was able to find around, and they kind of did have the bargaining power. I think in terms of, and I know it's not everyone's kind of choice to be moving and looking for a job at the moment. I think it's probably not the perfect time in terms of like Dave says, having all the cards in your hands. I think it's very much a business kind of market, business controlled market at this stage, because there aren't as many positions, there aren't as many things which you're going to be interviewed for. There's probably 4 times as many people going for the same position as you, so it's more competitive. And I think having that kind of understanding of where that's going to align you in the market is quite important. So yeah,
absolutely. So the audience, Chris Whitehead in the audience asks, what are some good tools for pricing yourself?
Yeah, there's a good website. It's levels.fyi. You can search pretty much any company that's known into that website, and it shows you it's employees submitted salary bandings for each different level. So obviously, if it's a smaller company, you're probably not going to understand. But if you put, say, a kind of Barclays investment bank into levels.fyi, it will show you each of the salary bandings, the average salary per level and years of experience. So that's the main site I use for kind of benchmarking yourself against the market.
Absolutely. So like, oh, go ahead.
No, I was probably just going to add to that. Obviously, like I said, those conversations, whether it be with myself, whether it be with another developer, look, I know it's not the easiest question to be speaking about salary, and a lot of people won't necessarily tell you. But even if it's a banding, even if it's an understanding, even if you've got say 10 years experience in Java here in the UK, and you say, look, am I being underpaid at 50,000? I think someone will more than happily give you a nod in the right direction. So yeah, there's a lot of power, whether it be conversations, understanding the market. I think a lot of people like myself, generally speaking, you'd be working with 2 or 3 positions at the same sort of level, same technologies at the same time. So not only does it give you one range that one company want to pay, but you could probably work out a range of about probably 20 odd thousand, which really can be sort of expected in the market. And obviously at that point it comes down to how you perform, how you compare to other developers in a certain process. But yeah, certainly a lot of value by almost just asking the question a lot of the time.
Agreed.
I know we kind of spoke on students getting out of the university. Like, what are some things that a student who's just leaving the university and getting into the job market, what do they need to do to really stand out and look like a good candidate?
Yeah, I think just as we mentioned earlier, LinkedIn is huge at the moment. It has been for years, and I can only see it increasing their importance. Keeping that up to date, a lot of connections and outreach is really important. So just connecting with, say, if you the hiring manager, an engineering manager, for example, at a company that you're going to interview at, connect with him, send him a message saying, "Hi, looking forward to speaking," or after you've had the interview, say, thanks for taking the time. I hope you consider me for the role. It's something, it takes 30 seconds, but it's definitely important. I know it's all surrounded around LinkedIn, but I do think that it's quite important.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, standing out is the most important thing. Like we said, it's much more competitive, particularly coming in with no experience, that you're not going to necessarily have that, commercial fit in the same way. So I think in terms of marketing yourself in the best way possible, it's certainly things like LinkedIn, using that CV. One of the things which I've seen be probably most effective coming out of college, of university, is doing things like the sandwich courses where you take a year out, do a year in industry. Obviously, that is effectively 1 year. That gets you kick-started. That's pushing you up in terms of the experience right away. Like, it might not be the perfect company for you, but just showing that year whilst you're kind of focused on studies, that you can go out and kind of hit the ground running at a company like that. It's very, very valuable in regard to that.
Absolutely. We have another question from the audience. When looking at a candidate's portfolio or profile, what are the most important standout things you look for before coming to a decision to reach out?
So generally for me, I would say relevance of experience. So obviously as the levels kind of go up, it would probably be more project focus, more if they do have information on things like team sizes, say they're a lead, for example, and the size of the team that they've been working with, maybe the company they've been working with, projects they've worked on. I think that's a lot more relevant. I think probably at the more sort of junior mid-level, it would be the sort of hands-on day-to-day of the correct technologies. Like, look, it's great to be versatile, but if a company's looking for a C# developer, a company's looking for a C# developer, and you probably want someone who's worked with C# for that entire time. And look, front-end experience is fantastic, but if it's a primarily back-end position, generally speaking, we'd look to probably work with people who are, more specifically back-end kind of thing. But yeah, I would say the relevance, to be honest, generally speaking, I anyway, I can't speak for Dave necessarily, but I'm sure he does a very similar thing. I would like to make a shortlist generally from people that I've spoken to previously, whether it be just a conversation, like I said, whether it be reached out and they're not interested for reason A, B, C, or just people whose profile I really like. And I'll effectively make a shortlist of 10, 15 people, say, look, I really do want to speak to you about this position. When would be a good time to discuss? And from there, the people who come back, the people who are open to having a discussion, generally speaking, are the ones who will find out more and obviously go into to certain processes. So yeah, I think it's generally the relevance of experience, potentially companies. I know this is probably better to ask to Dave on in terms of financial services and whatnot. I know that they're sometimes a little bit more specific on like companies they've worked with. So that might be a good thing to you to go on to.
Yeah. It's a tough one, really, because a lot of firms will say they'll only hire from direct competitors. Others will say, don't care where they come from. If they're a good developer, they're a good developer. So I wouldn't say that necessarily previous companies is something that's too important. I think that one thing to make note of that is a red flag or something that does stand out, as Jonathan asked, is tenure. It's really important. Unless you're a contractor, that makes sense. But if you are kind of a full-time permanent employee and have been throughout, say you've been working full-time for the past 10 years, you've been in over 10 companies, that's a red flag. You haven't sticked out one company for more than a year. The reason being is, okay, maybe you've laid off, it wasn't the right fit. That's understandable. But if the only explanation you've got is, I just was looking for a bit of a salary increase, that's a red flag. So if you do have quite a jumpy resume and it's not your fault, just be ready to talk over that. But if you have been jumping from job to job for the past kind of 5 or 10 years, that's definitely something that is a red flag to us.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And on top of that, companies are obviously, they are ready to pay the right money for the right person. So salary increases are, they're completely understandable. Like I said, no one works for free. We've all got reasons for working. But generally speaking, I think, like Dave says, if it's the only reason for you moving, it's probably not the perfect one, because one of the things which we do is obviously, speaking to the hiring team, we've almost got to put our reputation on the line to say, look, Kevin, look, Dave is a fantastic developer, and I trust they're going to be a part of your team for a long time, add a lot of value.
So, like, what are some of the trends that y'all are seeing in this market? Like, what technologies are really starting to blow up?
Yeah, interesting one. So at the moment, I would say the highest paid salary across the board in terms of tech stack is C++, because it's such a low latency and low level language. It's used within kind of low latency trading architecture, trading platforms, etc. And those are the companies that are able to pay outside of market rate. So I'd say at the moment that is the highest paying tech stack.
How about you, William?
Yeah.
What are you seeing?
So to be honest with you, in terms of my kind of niche, my focus is, generally speaking, companies with a Ruby on Rails technology stack. So generally speaking, in terms of my main focus, my main kind of market understanding, it would be in that Ruby on Rails space. I think, with that being said, conversations I have, certainly C++ is up there. I think the low latency side of it is very, very lucrative. I think besides that, potentially Python, I think, with some of the data side of things as well. The use of AI, which is coming in as well. I think Python's certainly almost making a resurgence. I know that some of the trading companies which Dave's worked with certainly use Python, and that is something which I've noticed. It may not necessarily have translated into salary increases so far, but I think it's certainly becoming more desirable as something within your skill set. So, often with these things, it does kind of follow suit in terms of, if it's more desirable and there's less of it, then the price point kind of goes up.
Absolutely. David, do you need to go, or are you still able to stay on a little bit?
I've got
Sure.
5 or 10 minutes. That's no problem.
Like, what are some of the technologies you kind of see receding, like some of the fields that are kind of saturated, and maybe the salaries might be dialing back a bit?
Yeah, in terms of the US, what I'm seeing is Java is not nearly as sought after as it has been over the past few years. And an even rarer tech stack that I've not seen much is C# and .NET. I've rarely seen many of those roles from my side, especially within the finance industry. Python, as Will said, due to the kind of the the size of AI ML at the moment is crazy hot. So if you are looking to get into coding, or you're at university, I'd definitely hone into either of those skills. It definitely put you in good stead for future opportunities.
I would certainly agree with the saturation of the Java market. I think it's got to be one of the biggest in the UK, if not the biggest. It was an area which I worked in when I very much kind of shadowed Dave's ways of working in terms of technologies and industries as well. I think Java, look, there were lots of openings, but it was kind of quite a lot of legacy sort of stuff, and not necessarily as sought over from developer side as well. I've seen a lot of people move from Java to things like Node.js, that kind of thing, fairly recently. Obviously, Python has done very well to hold on, and I think it's kind of continuing, fortunately, to keep going. But besides that, I think Java's probably the most saturated. I think C# still certainly got a place in the UK market. I think a lot of companies use it, and it doesn't feel as though it's dying out. Certainly the wrong word, because I know that probably almost offends a lot of people, but I wouldn't say it's dying out in the same way. It still feels like it's very, very prominent in a lot of the tech stacks which I'm seeing, a lot of the tech stacks and experiences of people which I speak to as well.
I'd say also in terms of kind of crypto blockchain tech, obviously that had a huge boost kind of mid last year, well, over the past 2 or 3 years, really. But at the moment, due to regulatory issues in the US, there's been a massive slowdown in hiring across all crypto fronts, across all industries, because of these issues. We expect by the end of this year, that will all be kind of sorted out. So hopefully, those with skills in kind of Solidity, other languages such as Rust, they could definitely be turning back on towards the end of this year, if not early next year.
Rust and Golang, I've seen a lot more than this time last year, which is it's a really interesting one, because like we sort of said earlier, there's nowhere near as many jobs, but the demand for Rust and Golang, particularly in the areas which I've been working with, the kind of people who I've been speaking to, almost the want from people to shift over as well to new languages. I think Rust and Golang is certainly taking a bit of a forefront there.
Absolutely. We have another question from the audience. Is there any advice for how a career changer with experience in IT who's looking for a junior web developer role can find positions that are a fit? I have 20 plus years of IT experience. Recruiters think I have that much coding experience, but I have around 3 years of coding experience. When I explain this to them, they essentially vanish.
Yeah, that's that is an issue that essentially comes down to your LinkedIn profile. I assume, Vish, that's where you're getting most of your outreach from. I think firstly, if you are open to work on LinkedIn, you can choose the job title that you're open to work as. A lot of people don't understand that. If you put in junior developer roles instead of just kind of software or senior developer, that would definitely help. And just making it apparent in your profile that you do only have 3 years of coding experience and you are looking for a junior to mid-level role. Putting that just in your bio, that's one of the first things that a recruiter does see. It's definitely important to highlight that. But unfortunately, I think that no matter how well you label your profile, you're always going to get people reaching out to you that with not relevant roles. So it's just about updating your profile and just dodging the bullets whenever you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I would kind of go on to that. There's a few people I've spoken to in the market have a similar sort of situation where they've worked in IT, but not necessarily development, not necessarily coding. And they say, look, should I just take all of this experience out? I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think keeping the job titles in is very beneficial, although taking away some of the projects that you've done, some of the work that you've worked on, some of the less relevant information, it feels like we're kind of going in circles here, because it's all back to the relevance. I would say if you focus on that 3 years of experience with lots of information, a couple of bullet points, maybe each job role. I'm not sure if it's been one job that you've been at or a few, but if you make sure that there's lots of information about the projects, the sort of things that you worked on in those, and then maybe say, if you're an IT manager, I'd just put probably the time that you were there as well as the job title, because I still think that it's relevant experience. I think working within the industry, it's going to benefit you more than someone who's probably got 3 years coming straight out of university, for example. it's still commercial experience, it's still professional experience. And going back to Dave, say for example, you were there 17 years at one company, they would love that. They would think there's someone that we can rely on here. There's someone who's evidently been loved at their previous company, who's done very, very well there, but has just decided to change career paths. And there's 1,000 reasons why you could change career path. So that's not going to be held against you just for going in for a junior role, despite being 20 years outside of graduation or 20 years into your career, as it were.
Absolutely. In terms of projects, like, do certain projects stand out more than others? Say, for example, I want to get in the financial industry. Should I be making a finance-based project versus like the latest to-do list?
It's tough to work on your own projects without being in the company, right? Especially financial applications. They're super expensive to produce. They're very complicated without a team behind you or that backing of a company. I think if you are looking to go into finance, one of probably the easiest ways for you to do it is to start off in a fintech company. Smaller scale, probably easier to get into. Obviously, a bit higher risk if they are smaller. But I think that, to be honest, I'm seeing a lot of shift into people wanting to go into smaller firms at the moment. It's much more fun, a lot more agile, nimble, better technology. It doesn't take months to get something approved, and you can just ask your manager next to you. I think that if you really do want to get into, a larger scale financial institution, I do think that fintech would be a very interesting route to take there.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. I think, yeah, with the projects, obviously, like Dave sort of says, it's kind of hard to be working on your own stuff as well as, working the 9 to 5 as well. There's some people I imagine just want to shut off, and that's not because they're not passionate. It's because they've just done a full day's worth of work and they probably want to go see their friends. They want to probably spend time with family, whatever it is. But I would say, generally speaking, doing some sort of work on the side is probably the most beneficial to that. Having something which you can show. I know that paired programming is probably one of the most dreaded things in the market. A paired programming interview is probably one of the things which I hear the most in terms of when people ask about the interview process. And I think going forward with a little bit of code, even if it's just a small thing that you've done and you can show a bit of the process behind it, that holds a lot of value in terms of what clients potentially plan to do with their next or with their interview process. I think I've had it probably 3 or 4 times, and this has been with smaller companies, admittedly, so probably not financial services per se, but with the smaller companies where they thought, okay, that's actually a fantastic bit of code. Maybe we turn the paired programming test into a more conversational technical test, and from there it's like we can kind of fill the gaps there. We can even discuss some of the code sort of thing, rather than necessarily put all the pressure on into a paired programming test.
So I know sometimes people have gaps on their resume. They may not be at a job they like. They stayed there for a month or 2. Should they put that on their resume, or should they omit that?
That's an interesting one. I'm really not sure. I don't think there's any harm in including it, as long as you do put the reason why, saying like, this is a short stint at this company, explained what you did, but just say was laid off from this company, wasn't a right match. And I think that is really, it will be understood by anyone that is interviewing you. So I think that any experience is good experience. So definitely do include that, but just don't make it half your resume. Just include it as a nice short snippet, so there's not a huge gap there.
Yeah.
Turn my light on again.
The most important thing I would say is probably just not lie. Whether it be a gap in your resume that you don't want to include, or whether it be something that you include, I wouldn't lie about it. It happened. It's changed who you are today, for better or for worse. Hopefully for better, obviously. But being honest and being upfront about it, like you said, like, look, it's 2 months doing this project. It wasn't the right fit. They're going to understand that. Everyone's tried something which they don't like, whether it be food, whether it be a job. It's the same sort of principle. You can say you've tried it, and you can say that you've at least learned that it's not something which you want to do anymore, kind of thing. And that's, again, it can almost be flipped into why you're a better fit for this. I've done project A, which I learned I don't like. I don't like working for a company like this. That might be why I'm a better fit for this. And yeah, I think honesty probably goes the longest way in terms of that. And I think, yeah, hiring teams certainly probably see that the same way.
So I know we spoke about like a lot of the opportunities that come from social media, but I know if you're not careful, you can ruin a lot of opportunities. So, for example, I've seen people post videos on TikTok about working at Facebook and how they kind of live that leisurely life all day. Like, what are some of the things to avoid doing on social media platforms?
Yeah, probably not posting things about your current role. It probably wouldn't be a great idea, to be honest. If in any role, any industry, if you're posting a video of you just chilling, not working 4 out of 5 days of the week, it's never going to reflect well. It just shows that you're not. Post on social media, I think it's a great thing. Just be careful and don't post anything incriminating about your work style or anything like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, like Dave says, nothing that's going to come across badly. Obviously, in the same way as making a great LinkedIn makes you more marketable and makes you more kind of desirable in the market. I think posting things which are a little bit not that you're not sure on is probably a bad idea. I think if you can think about, I don't know, parents, friends, children not being happy with it, it's probably the wrong thing. It's probably not something which, you know, the company which you're working for or interviewing for want to be associated with. And like you say, obviously there's so much good that can come from social media. You can create this profile of who you are. You can be effectively whoever you want to be on social media. And I know that people, you know, make a living off that, for example. But when it's as simple as not posting that you're not working at Facebook, I would say don't do that. And a lot of the time as well, if you've got a problem at work, the easiest kind of thing is to probably have a conversation with a colleague or your boss, rather than, you know, put something out there which is going to damage your future career as well. Because although you can delete these things, there's always a way of finding it.
Agreed.
So like sometimes people, they don't have the most amicable split with companies. Like maybe the company's laying off a lot of people. Should they like kind of like be quiet about it on like LinkedIn, or are they free to let people know their experiences? Like how do you navigate that?
I would generally say it's a part of like careers. I think you know, the tech layoffs have been something which has happened. Like you're not the only one. Look, you can be vocal about it. You can speak about it, but generally speaking, you're not going to be the only one. I would say probably safe space is probably the best way to do it, because tensions are going to be high. You're obviously going to make certain decisions based off tensions being high. You're probably going to say things that, you know, potentially you don't even mean. But equally, if that's, you know, a way of coping with it, great. But sort of think about the way that you're doing it. I wouldn't go, Facebook have done this, horrible company, because who knows in 6 years' time when everything's fantastic and everyone's hiring and you get offered a brilliant position at CTO, for example. Obviously, that's a fantastic role. I imagine they would probably look back at the thing that you said about Facebook when you worked there, you know, 6 years ago, kind of thing.
Yeah. I was just going to add, firstly, make sure that you're not breaching any non-disclosure agreements that you've got with your current company. And if you are going to write a post on LinkedIn or any social media when your tensions are high, just write it, save it, have a read of it tomorrow when you're a bit cooled off, and then post it and probably edit it. But by all means, I'm sure you've all seen those LinkedIn posts, Facebook posts go viral. It's someone getting laid off and they are in desperate need of a job and they've got 20 pretty much job offers in the comments. I think it's useful, and there's no harm in posting on LinkedIn. We announced the layoffs a week beforehand anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, it's a very good way of getting back out there. If you say, look, I was laid off from Facebook, I have these skills, I have this, it was, you know, it is what it is. There's going to be people like myself who, look, we might not have the perfect position for you, but all it takes is one like from us, and then, I don't know, a couple thousand people can see it who are in our network. And I imagine if you, Kevin, were to like it as well, then you've got about 7,000 people in your network as well. So a like from you to a simple, you know, post saying, I'm now open for work and I've got 4 years experience in Angular, the reach is kind of incredible. So yeah, certainly feel free to post about it. There's benefits and positives even to posting about something like that. But yeah, have your wits about you and think about it. Like Dave said, if it's a little bit risky, I would say take a bit of time. Maybe even check with a friend, see what they think, and go.
Yeah. Awesome. Kevin, I was just going to say I've got to shoot off if that's okay.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the podcast. It's been great to meet and enjoy the rest.
Definitely loved having you on.
Thank you. Likewise. Bye-bye, guys. Thanks.
So yeah, William, I know AI is really like shaking up a lot of industries. So what can developers do to prepare themselves for the AI revolution?
Well, I think one of the things which you can do, and this is probably it probably is the same with most positions, but show your added value kind of thing. Show how, look, if you can code very well, show that maybe you can articulate that to someone else as well. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure AI is going to work out a way to teach people things as well, but there's nothing better. I know for my job, for example, there's nothing better than when I ask my boss something and he say, oh, I had this exact thing 6 months ago. This is exactly what you do. I think the art of conversation is still very much, it's and always will be very, very important. Besides that, I think, keeping your skills up to date. I don't think AI is going to wait around for anyone. So I think making sure that you're working on the most up-to-date technologies is probably going to be, the most important thing. Keeping, your skill set up to date as well, not letting it fall behind is probably very, very much important. Having that good relationship with bosses as well, I would say. And again, look, tech layoffs aren't anyone's choice, and no one wants to do them. But if you've got that good relationship with your boss, if you've got that good relationship with a decision maker, you're probably more likely to be one of the ones that are considered to stay. Is probably what I'd recommend. I think it's about the kind of holistic view, isn't it? Rather than just the skill set. Like, look, the skill set's fantastic, but yeah, being the best employee you can, being the best person you can, is probably what's going to set you above the AI revolution, I would say.
So I know you kind of spoke on soft skills. How important is that as an engineer to have those soft skills and be able to communicate?
Yeah, so I think this is probably one of the most important things. I think from what I've seen, from where developers have been in a process, again, their CV may look fantastic, but being able to articulate things is probably the most important. Whether it be, a quick phone call at 7:30 in the evening because something's gone wrong and you need to tell someone who's in a slightly different team, or whether it just be someone who's working directly below you, directly sitting directly next to you, kind of thing. I think the ability to be able to tell them exactly what it is that you're doing is very, very important. If nothing else, it kind of keeps you up to date as well. If if you're sitting with your headphones in for 10 years straight doing the same thing, suddenly take a month off, you're like, okay, what's going on here? Whereas if it's something that you can speak through and something which you can almost methodolize kind of thing, so make a method of it, then I would say that's very important. And yeah, generally it goes back to the kind of holistic approach. Being able to converse well is always going to be very, very useful, I think, for your skill set and for your career growth. More importantly, if you're looking to go into a lead or architectural position, then that's almost tenfold. you certainly need to be able to communicate for a position like that, I would say.
Absolutely. So say for example somebody's been like a junior for a year or two, like what skills do they need to move from like junior to senior? Like what do you need to see on their resume to recommend them for a more senior position?
So I guess for a more senior position, it would be continuous and consistent delivery, being able to meet those deadlines. I know that a lot of the time it's quite hard to articulate onto a resume, particularly when we're saying, look, don't put too much detail in, put the relevant detail in. So it's kind of hard to almost put that there for the shop window, as it were, for the initial sort of review. However, being able to articulate to a hiring manager, a team lead, what you did, when you did it. There's always these questions, which is like, when have you worked well under pressure, for example? Being able to say, I did this in this amount of time with this kind of like riding over me as well is really, really important, I would say, from that perspective. Being able to not just show that you've got experience, but that you've got the right experience, you've got commercial experience, you've worked to certain deadlines, things that all businesses obviously and all companies and all development teams have to deal with is probably very, very important in that regard as well.
Absolutely. Let me see. Think of something. So yeah, like in terms of technologies, how is the front end looking to you? Like what is the most dominant like or emerging technologies? Is it still React, or is anything else kind of like starting to pop into view?
So I think React and Angular, from what I'm seeing, and obviously this is a fairly small snippet of the wider market. There's untold amount of development companies. I think React and Angular are certainly probably the most favored, which I'm seeing. I think there's obviously a lot of JavaScript frameworks out there as well, which you're working with. I think in terms of that, it's probably not my most kind of specialized area. Generally speaking, I do work on the back end. I think from what I've seen, React Native is starting to get up as well, which is quite an interesting one because that, if I'm not mistaken, is much more kind of web development, but is becoming more prominent from what I can see. I guess that kind of falls under the React, which goes to speak about how big and how popular React is itself. But yeah, I would say React, Angular. I think JavaScript. A lot of people have got obviously JavaScript experience. So yeah.
Absolutely. I know another important aspect is how one relates to recruiters and maintains a relationship with them. Like, say, for example, you reach out to somebody for a role and they don't reply or they reply rudely. Does that kind of affect like you reaching out to them again? Or
Yeah. So I would say in that kind of situation, yes. However, it is a case of you understand that if you were to receive 1,000 messages a day and probably only 10 of them were relevant, you would probably be quite annoyed by the 1,000th one. So there's an aspect of it where you think, like, don't worry about it. There's a reason why they've acted like that as well. They're not gonna no one's openly rude for no reason, sort of thing. Like, if you're approaching someone about a junior position with maybe where they're looking for about 2 years experience, they've got 26 years of experience, for example, they're probably going to be a little bit annoyed. But generally speaking, I think keeping that relationship up, and it works both ways as well. I think if we're kind of rude to developers, you find that they don't want to work with us either. Whereas if you're transparent, consistent, keep them very much informed of everything. That's probably the most important aspect of keeping relationships, and that's kind of how it goes with developers. Probably post that first conversation, say you're in an interview process somewhere. A lot of the time, and I'm sure anyone who sees this who's ever worked with me and yourself, I think we mentioned this a few times, but in terms of other processes, the reason this is so important is so that we can speak to the client in regard to how likely you are to genuinely go forward with the company. If you're one of those candidates like we mentioned earlier who has 16 interview processes, 3 at final stage, and then one company says we would like to take you forward for an interview, we can sort of tell them probably worth holding off just because there's 16 other processes. Like, look, by all means interview them, I'm sure you really like them, but potentially this person who's much more interested in this specific opportunity would be the better one to take forward. And I think it's a case of assisting both sides of the hiring process. And I think it all comes back to those relationships, like you said. I think one of the things I would recommend is always replying to a recruiter, because you never know when you're going to need them. I appreciate I've not reached you at the right time, but say in 6 months' time, the opportunity which I reached you out about sounds like something that you'd be interested in. A lot of the time, the recruiter has a similar position, if not the same role at another company, that's probably going to still be open, or probably going to be looking for candidates again. A lot of these teams, a lot of these startups as well, are going through super growth. They might be looking for 20 Java developers in London, in Dallas, in New York, for example. And it might well be that you're getting to the back end of the hiring process, and that now sounds like a really good opportunity. And because you didn't ignore it, because you didn't, I don't know, decline it, that sort of thing, you're now at the top of my mind as well. I'm thinking, who was that really good developer? Because like I said, in terms of that shortlisting process, I also have that noted down somewhere, probably as the people I wanted to speak to in January. They're probably the perfect people to speak to in September, because, you know, how much can change in 7 months. I've seen people who have, you know, job roles which last 3 months, for example. You could have gone through 2 jobs in that time. So yeah, just always kind of being, I guess, respectful is probably most important. And it comes from recruiters as well. I think when someone says no, a lot of the time it means no. And like, look, you can highlight how a role might be better for them, but if you're going to keep badgering on and they're still saying no, then it's probably not the perfect opportunity. And you want that 2-way sort of process. You want to be able to make sure it's, you know, the right opportunity for them, as well as the right time, all that sort of thing. And it goes back to the kind of career coaching like I was speaking about earlier.
Absolutely. I know you mentioned earlier, like, you don't want to just necessarily put somebody in a company that they don't want to be at. Like, what are some of the things you do to make sure that company's a good match for a candidate?
So like I said, shortlisting from, you know, the people that we see, the market. So this could come down to things like industry. So say banking, medical, anything like that. If you see someone with that specific experience, you think instantly they're probably going to be slightly more interested in that. If you see someone who's worked at Barclays, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, for example, 3 massive banks, you probably don't think that they're good for the 16-person agency who works very much on like an ad hoc basis kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It's very much a case of that. And I think with that being said, you also then have a lot of value in the screening calls. So I think, again, when we initially spoke, we had that screening call where wanted to find out as much about you, you know, why you're looking to move on, what you're looking for in the market, what's important to you. And from that, you can make a quite educated guess, even before me talking to you about the position, whether it's going to be the right fit. And that's tech stack, experience, ambitions, responsibilities, which obviously I know, which I was about to tell you, sort of thing. You kind of make an educated guess from there. And obviously, as well, with, you know, 50, 100 conversations for each position, if it ends up being like that, you get quite a good idea by that point as to how interested people are. And you can walk through projects. There's a lot about that which you know, people see value in. If you know about the project, if you know about what they're going to look like in 6 months' time, if you know about what the career growth looks like in 24 months, that's really good opportunity to tell the developer about it and add that value there. You don't know why they're looking to move on. If you take them from one place and put a CV into place B, but you don't know why they're looking to move on, you can't really put together, and you can't then articulate to the client that it's going to be a good fit as well. So yeah, I think a lot of it comes just down to sort of understanding a little bit more. So understanding more about the client, understanding a little bit more about the developer, and really finding that fit, because there is someone out there. The company wouldn't exist if there wasn't someone out there.
Yes.
So yeah, it's worth certainly taking that little bit of extra time to find the perfect person, kind of thing.
Absolutely. I think that's all the questions I have off the top of my head right now. Is there anything you would like to share with the audience?
Not massively, to be honest. I think it has been great working with you, and it's really interesting to be part of this community, kind of more officially now in Coders Conversation Folklore. So I'll be showing all my friends. Hopefully, we can get some views for the team. But yeah, I guess besides that, how are you doing? You know, we've spoken a bit. How are things going with you?
Oh yeah, I can't complain, man. Just been really busy working on a variety of different projects. It's kind of interesting, you know, trying to put stuff together, you know, versus, you know, just working a job and being told what to do. But yeah, I've got quite a few projects on my plate, doing the coder conversation stuff, making websites for people. And it's been pretty interesting. Like, you know, a lot of juniors have been reaching out, wanting to, you know, work with me. And, you know, I've been trying to figure out a way to get them on projects so they can kind of have some experience. So
brilliant. And how does that change, obviously, when you are in work, to how much time can you put aside to this? Is this like affected? Do you have to slow this down? Is it just something where you're up much longer doing a lot more, actual work? How is this almost affected by, when you're in full-time employment again?
Oh, so once I got laid off from my previous job, they gave me a good severance package. So I've been pretty much free to kind of do what I want. So I think the biggest challenge has been finding out which projects to work on, because I'm working on like an Angular project, 3 or 4 WordPress projects. I got this as well. Just finding a way to divide up that time is the biggest challenge. And how I'm doing that, I don't really have like a set way of doing that. It's just kind of like, okay, I need to get this done. Let me spend a couple hours over here. I need to get that done. Spend a couple hours over there. But I know I can probably be more structured in how I'm approaching things. But I think that just comes with the territory when you really first start something new.
Yeah, no, of course. And what would you say the best bit about having this community is? Because for me, like you said, obviously, if there's juniors reaching out to you, and you're sort of the go-to person to put people into a project or give them work to do or that sort of thing, I'd find that, really, I can't even think of the word, but yeah, I would absolutely love it. So what would you say is the best part of having this community, having this tight group of developers?
Yes, I think you eventually come to realize, like, it's the people you meet, and it's just fun hearing their stories and helping them progress their careers. And it's not always about just the career progression either. It's just like I met so many people like through LinkedIn and just working on different projects. It's that, to me, that's the main thing, just meeting interesting people and just collaborating with them.
No, exactly. And I guess going back to almost what Vish said, there's any one of 1,000 reasons why you might have had a career change. I know that we've had park rangers, we've had army veterans on here, and it's really interesting to find out first off what people did, why they went that route first, and then what brought them to software development and coding. So yeah, no, I very much agree. I'd say that's probably one of the best parts of this as well, and really understanding what makes people tick and what is the motivation for working, because like we said, everyone works for a reason. There's people who work for a salary, but I don't think there's anything better than seeing someone who's really passionate about something, really getting the job which they want, for example, and really working on work which they enjoy. And I think checking in after, say, 3 months on someone that you've placed and seeing that they're having a really good time at the company, it really means the world. So yeah, I think, to be honest, that's all the questions. I've had a lot of fun on this, but yeah, anything more from you?
I think that's it for my part, man. But if you ever want to stop by again, please do. We usually have different conversations on things going on in the news and things of that nature. So.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Maybe we pencil one in for this time next year, see how the market's been, see how Coders Conversations is getting on, and be more than happy to do that. Who's up next? Who's the next podcast?
Oh, still searching.
Well, I'll have some conversations in my network and see what we can do.
Okay, absolutely.
Well, thanks very much, and I look forward to speaking to you again very, very soon, no doubt.
Appreciate you for stopping by, man. You have a great one.
Absolutely, and you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll catch